Hello, everyone. Welcome to Rats in Boilersuits, the Torchwood podcast. I'm Steph.
And I'm Kim. Thank you for not stealing my intro. Very well saved.
I remembered. We watch Torchwood, and then we tell you about it. Today, we've watched episode 7 of the first series, which is called Greeks Bearing Gifts. Kim, why don't you tell us what happens in this episode?
So, in this episode of Torchwood, the team are called to the discovery of an item and a skeleton, I guess, buried in probably a Welsh quarry, as most things are. They need to investigate where it came from because it's probably alien. Meanwhile, its owner, but we don't know that yet, meets Tosh and seems to know a lot about her. She gives her a pendant, which gives Tosh the ability to read people's minds and thoughts. Tosh starts sleeping with the alien, because why wouldn't you? And then gradually, we unfortunately find out that she's malicious and she's trying to get to Torchwood via Tosh so she can reclaim her ship, which is now in Torchwood Hub. In the end, she gets in, Jack's figured it all out, and blasts her into the sun. Is what happens there.
Full death penalty.
Yeah.
I suppose this is the first episode that really concentrates on Tosh.
Mm-hmm.
She's not been quite as in the background as Yantar, but
it certainly feels like it in this episode,
Yeah.
doesn't it? No one seems to care about it.
No one likes Tosh.
Yeah. This is something I didn't remember except for on this rewatch, that like Torchwood is much sadder. Not sadder in plot, but sadder in like, I'm like, oh, look at this fun team. They're so funny together. This is great. And I'm like, these people need to go for a drink together just once in a while and check in on each other. They're not good friends.
They're not nice to each other at all.
Maybe it's a series 1 thing. I do think series 2 is better.
I'm absolutely sure that's true.
Mm-hmm.
It's so strange, and because actually, I mean, we'll talk about it when we get into it. Because Gwen and Owen are getting on for the first time.
They're getting to know each other, aren't they?
They're getting to know each other. They're finally bonding as a team, but maybe not in the right way.
Yeah. This episode marks 4 out of 5 of the Torchwood team being a big old bisexual.
Yes.
Beautiful to see.
Thoroughly approve.
Never the word, though, is it?
Oh, yeah.
Never the word.
So true.
We don't love to see it, but we love to see it.
Yeah. I've got very mixed feelings on the queer stuff in this episode.
Mm-hmm.
On the one hand, it's Toshiko having a both romantic and sexual relationship with another woman. That's great. I like that. And I think there are elements of the relationship I really enjoy. On the other hand, I don't know, there's a lot of things it does that I wish it didn't,
Mm-hmm.
and there's things it doesn't do that I wish it did.
Sure.
But we'll get into that.
Yeah. So the episode starts with, don't know if you recognise our old friend there, Steph. It's Fox.wav.
Oh, it was the fox
Of
again.
course it is. We're in a forest. It's nighttime. Fox.wav smashes on in there. Good to see you again, old friend.
How many times does the fox turn up in this series?
Oh, so many.
I like the idea that you've got to try and spot them and collect them.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're in 1812, and this scene, I think we have to talk about this in context of the entire episode.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I first watched this, well, what happens? We see a man and a woman go into a forest.
We do. So we see a man and a woman go into a forest, and the impression we get from the dialogue is that viewing the alien in the forest is something that all the army boys who are stationed there have been like competing with each other with to be cool. Because she says, as she's leading him in, he seems nervous, and she's like, oh, not much further. And then she says, oh, the other boy's been teasing you, is that it? As in, because you weren't brave enough to go and see the alien. Because what we later see is the idea that she had just arrived as an alien, but someone disturbed her, so she plunged out his heart.
Yeah.
And that doesn't line up.
When you first watch the scene, well, let's talk about Mary first.
Mm-hmm.
So Mary is apparently a prostitute or a sex worker.
Yeah.
None of the words used by the man are acceptable. But like, it feels really strange because she's sort of teasing him, and then he slaps her because she makes what he takes to be quite a blasphemous joke about her name Mary.
Mm-hmm.
And she sort of laughs it off and is like, oh, sort of religious, are we? So I watched that thinking, ooh, there's something weird about that. I think it's very strange to be slapped hard and to still be kind of teasing. And like, you know, I do think there are people who are so used to violence that even after being slapped, they're not shocked. But to be like still provocative is, I found quite strange. So I thought, oh, this person's an alien. I vaguely remembered it from watching it before. But she's not yet. This is just two human beings having a really weird experience.
So what is it then? So the real Mary
is
a sex worker.
Yes.
The other boys have been teasing him about not having had sex.
Yeah,
I
maybe.
guess the other boy's been teasing you. Is that it? So you've come to see me, the lady of the night.
Yeah.
And then when he is angry and she runs away, he is now chasing her. She runs and finds Alien.
Yes.
Alien takes her form, but I was disturbed, as in the person who was chasing the person who I possessed runs in and I plunged out his heart.
Yeah.
I completely misunderstood it then.
Okay,
so
there we go.
I've caught up. That makes a lot more sense.
Nice.
I thought the soldiers were like competing to go see the alien because they thought it was cool.
I was going with that because I thought maybe I'd misunderstood. But I think I'd just missed the line, have the other boys been teasing you? Or maybe you start watching, you go, I don't understand anything that's going on yet. So I hadn't read too much into that. But I think it must be a sex thing.
You're a virgin. The other boys have been teasing you. You've come to me to solve that. And then the alien just happens to be there.
Yeah.
That makes a lot more sense.
Also,
I thought she was like a museum curator for this alien in the woods.
She's introducing him to the alien. Look what I found.
And you're both called Mary. That's so weird.
I suppose it also fits in with the fact that this episode mentions sex a lot. Mm-hmm. Even when Tosh is able to read minds, she reads the minds of many, many strangers, and loads of the thoughts are sexual. So in some ways, I think sex is more important to this episode than even episode 2, which is very, very sexual, has an alien that feeds on sexual orgasmic energy. Mm-hmm. But this one is more like, we're going to look at almost every aspect, only in glimpses. We're not going to get much on any of it. It's like a series of extremely short insights into people's sexual experiences or lives or traumas a lot of the time. So it's interesting that we start with a guy who is nervous about being a virgin, but also clearly a violent misogynist.
Yeah.
So
the two quite often go hand in hand.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd agree that it's more focused on sex than episode 2, though.
Okay.
I'm gonna...
Fair enough.
No.
All right, I'll argue my case down the line.
Okay. So, after the 1812 bit, we say goodbye to Fox.wav and we go to present day, where Torchwood have been called to... Basically, they've been digging this out. They found stuff. I guess some, like, archaeologists have been called, but as soon as they're like, that doesn't look like it's from Earth, they're like... Up to Torchwood. Torchwood have arrived. Yeah.
I really like this scene.
Me too.
The woodland scene is a little bit... It's two people in a wood dressed like they're from Les Mis.
Yeah.
This isn't the most expensive part of the episode. But here, we've got a sense of scale. Mm-hmm. And we get the team pulling up. We get the 4 non-Yantor members of Torchwood marching into a little tent. And we keep panning back and we see Mary... that we previously saw 200 years ago, but she's wearing modern day clothes and she's watching.
So the impression we get is that Mary knows that the transporter she came on got buried and broken, and that she's been waiting all this time for it to be uncovered because she couldn't do that herself. Yeah. I have some issues with that because why couldn't she?
Yeah.
She's very manipulative. I feel like she could have got in somehow.
That's true.
But basically... she's watching. I really like when the gang are investigating what's going on. Tosh is like, she gives her little analysis of how old it is.
Yeah.
And she gives it to the month or to the week.
Yeah.
And then she's like, I'm sorry, I can't be more accurate. I love little lines like
I
that.
love it. Yes.
Just like, it's so
I made
funny.
exactly the same note.
The ground's been disturbed. I'm sorry, I can't be more accurate than almost to the minute. What?
It's a really witty script, this.
Yeah.
And I feel like we've watched a few episodes recently that got made in a hurry. Mm-hmm. This one feels like it's had a bit more TLC.
Yeah.
There's so much character in all of this. I also love Jack's line here, because they've gone into this tent and he goes, just once, I'd like to walk into one of these little tents and it's a party.
Yeah.
And there's food and drinks and people dancing and a girl crying in the corner.
Yeah.
And I love that line for multiple reasons. Mm-hmm. Firstly, I love that this does not feel like a party tent. It's on a dig site.
It's not a gazebo, is it? Like...
But I also feel like it's a character thing where Jack's like, part of my job is to keep things light and to kind of bring a sort of informality to this. Mm-hmm. But I also love that even in his idea of a party, there's a girl crying in the corner, which is slightly a microcosm of this whole episode.
Yeah.
Because we're going to see, in fact, later on, we see Owen and Gwen flirting together and we see Jack hanging out and laughing along with them. He's not excluded by their slightly secret new relationship. He can still hang out with them. But Tosh, it breaks her heart. She's the crying girl in the corner.
She is.
Very sad.
Also, one of the best lines Jack turns to Owen, who's looking at skeletons, like, how's our friend over there? And he's like, she's dead.
Yeah.
I particularly like it because in the last episode, Owen gave such a boring assessment of like, oh, well, the body's been stripped of flesh and internal organs, that I made that joke about it, and now they're making it themselves.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, thanks, Quincy. I'm like,
Yeah.
no. That is the level we normally operate at.
That's true. It already feels like this show kind of knows what it is, what the tropes are. It can already laugh at itself a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So we found the skeleton, which has a hole in the chest. Owen thinks it's a woman who's been shot. So we know, because we've watched the whole episode, that Mary in the modern day is the same Mary from 1812. But I suppose if you watch this for the first time, you might think she got killed, because we see him shooting her, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
But really, we know that it's his body, and he's been killed probably not by a gunshot. But Owen doesn't know that yet. The other thing is there is an alien object, and I really like this object, the design of this object, because even though it's clearly alien, it's really weird looking, but it's rusted.
Mm-hmm.
It's quite nice seeing someone design an alien thing that looks old.
Yeah.
Now, we know it's the ship, it's the transporter, it's how the aliens came down. But for most of this episode, what this object is a huge question. And the first guess is that it's a weapon, but Jack points out it could just as easily be a massive stapler. Mm-hmm. We simply don't know. A big running theme of Torchwood and Doctor Who as well, I suppose. Just because it's alien doesn't mean it's exciting. Sometimes it's nothing.
It's like in the episode of Series 1 of Doctor Who where they're in that museum, Mr. Van Statten's museum, and then there's that big thing and they think it's a weapon, but it turns out to be a musical instrument, and the Doctor just gently strokes it. It's that kind of vibe.
Yeah. I also remember that same episode has the Doctor going through a big box of alien weapons, trying to find a gun that can be used against a Dalek. And it's like, broken, we don't have the ammo for that. That's a hairdryer.
Yeah.
So the idea that we would mischaracterize an alien hairdryer.
Yeah. So the gang are ready to leave, right? They're getting their things together. Gwen helps Owen up out of the hole that he's in and comments on how light he is, and they have a little flirt about it. Gwen says that Owen is light, and he's like, I'm not light, I'm wiry. And actually, the girls go mad for it, but I suppose I don't need to tell you that. And again, he plays it like he's being an asshole.
Yeah.
But her face, she's fine with it. I mean, it's still gross, but it does make it seem more like it's not him constantly being creepy and gross. Don't know why, because she is reciprocating and she's more on board. But in the moment, Tosh sees that happen and clearly has feelings about it.
Yeah. This is reiterating the point from Countryside that Tosh has an unrequited crush on Owen. And I think Gwen knows it as well. I feel like she clocked it last episode. I think she clocks it here as well. The Tosh is a bit funny about this.
Yeah.
But maybe Gwen is just... Actually, she has her own thing with Owen. Maybe she's just wondering, has she worked it out or not? Mm-hmm. Maybe she's in her own head. Owen's line, I'm going to point out, I skipped back on this episode 3 times to confirm I hadn't misheard it, and then I turned subtitles on. It's definitely right. The actual line Owen says is, I'm not light, I'm wiry. Fat girls go mad for it.
Is that what he said?
That's what he says.
I thought he said, in fact, girls go mad for it.
So unless the subtitles are wrong...
So he doesn't say... So I thought he said... In fact, girls go mad for it, but I suppose I don't need to tell you that. So is he also calling Gwen fat?
I think so. So
that's so weird.
The reason I listened to it 3 times is I couldn't tell if it was fat or in fact. The subtitles think it's fat.
Okay.
It might be that the subtitler
they have been wrong
also
before.
misheard. Yes.
Yeah.
So that's possible. But
we need to get the transcript up. So I need to know. I need to know the truth on this.
Yeah.
That's so weird.
Because Bern Gorman as Owen also sort of looks like gives Gwen a little look up and down.
Yeah.
Which might be, I don't know. Bern Gorman always, and I love him for this, chooses the most unpleasant possible reading of Owen.
No, it can't be that he is, because one, why would he? That is not the type of insults that Owen does so far. 2, they're sleeping together. It would not be in his interest to shut that down.
Yeah.
And 3, Gwen's reaction as she turns around is a light smile, like she's just enjoyed the interaction.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any way it could be that.
Yeah.
That, surely not.
It put me in a bad frame of mind to interpret Owen's character for the rest of the episode.
I don't think it can't be.
Yeah.
I can't accept it.
Let's reject it.
Yeah.
Because here's my take on the Owen-Gwen thing. And this is an ongoing thing throughout the episode. They are flirting pretty openly. And they're slightly worried about giving the game away, but they're so in their own world. Gwen is particularly excited, I think. She's having a good time for the first time in ages. I think there's a danger sometimes, and I think this is in the real world as well, that we can look at a man and a woman together, romantically or otherwise, and the man appears to be saying something unpleasant, and we look to the woman's reaction to decide if it's unpleasant or not. Sometimes that's fair. Sometimes it's important to allow a woman the agency to go, actually, no, I quite like this slightly mean sense of humor. Sure. But I think sometimes women go along with stuff because it's easier and more comfortable. And so if you as an observer go, oh, if she's fine with it, it's clearly fine. Sometimes we give horrible men a free pass.
But I also think usually when that happens, the woman will also look around and read that it's up to them and have to laugh it off. And that isn't done in any of this.
That's true.
You know, like it's a subtle, because the shot we're focusing on is Tosh and her reaction to that conversation. Gwen is smiling to herself in a kind of like, you know, like a quiet smile of genuine appreciation for a fun interaction. So I'm just not going to accept it.
I guess she's keyed into Owen's sense of humour. And I think that his sense of humour is unacceptable because he does it with people that he does not know won't be sensitive to the mean jokes he makes.
Yeah.
But for Gwen, for these particular two people, it works.
But I also think it's kind of that thing where she's like, she had such a tough beginning in work. She's obviously just glad to be fitting in now. However, she gets on with Jack really well. And I feel like if she wasn't getting enjoyment from her and Owen's gross flirting, she'd probably just be chatting to Jack.
True.
Like, it's not like he's her only option to talk to right now.
That is true.
I hate it, but I do think she's on board. Yeah. Even though Owen's still not acceptable. I think now there is no dodgy dynamic other than when he says, like, saying that publicly, suppose I don't need to tell you that, is a kind of threat of like, we have this secret, be ashamed if I said anything. Yeah. And like, we've all been around people who are doing that and it makes everyone else uncomfortable, or when it's done to you, you're like, okay, so now I know that we have this trust sometimes, but in front of other people you're going to change. Okay. Yeah. That's where he is inappropriate. But other than that, I think... Yeah.
I think there is a thing in relationships where the danger something represents can be bad in its own right. Even though it's not bad right now, this could become bad so easily. That's what I fear with Owen, is Gwen seems perfectly happy at the minute, but I do not trust him. I don't think he's making sure she's fine with it.
Sure.
I think she happens to be fine with it, thank goodness. But he could very easily cross the line because he hasn't got his own internal compass.
Sure.
We jump to the hub next, and we get more Gwen and Owen flirting. And here we get the meat of this interaction, I think, which is that Gwen and Owen are like two children in love, having a lovely time, messing about.
They are like teenagers, aren't they? It's ridiculous.
But Gwen and Owen's love is quite selfish. This relationship is quite selfish. They are so in on each other's jokes, they don't think about Tosh.
Yeah.
This is very literal here because they've broken her computer. Like, Owen's kicked out her plug, ruined her work because of a stupid dare in joke.
Yeah. My personal opinion is that is completely unacceptable.
Yeah.
Jack should be stepping in. Are you fucking joking, right? So these people, Tosh says her computer was running a translation software that she had been working on for months, and she was trying to work out what something said. That is her job.
Yeah.
That is her top secret, outside the government, beyond the police, alien hunting job. She is right on it. She's on the ball. She's coming in. She's doing work. And you're fucking playing football, flirting around her, and you kicked out her plug. All right. Granted, maybe it shouldn't just be plugged in and that should be easy to kick out. However, I just think at that point, if I was Tosh, I'd just go snitch to Jack. I'd be like, have you heard about this? He'd be like, what? You people are paid so much money. Are you kidding? There's only 5 of them. Yeah. So they all need to be good at their job. But Gwen's only job is to be bring humanity back. And she's just, what?
Yeah.
I hate everything about this because it's bad. Like, why is Tosh the uncool one for doing her job? Yeah. You're all paid so much.
Not just for doing her job, but also for being upset that her work has been ruined. Months of work.
Building up for months.
Owen and Gwen, very unapologetic. They're sort of, oh, all right, I guess you need to know this. This happened. All right. Don't go on about it.
And then Owen says, Tosh, sometimes I think even that stick up your ass has got to stick up its ass.
Yeah.
Like, no, this is a disciplinary meeting.
Yeah. This isn't even one stick up her ass level. We are at no sticks.
No sticks of anyone's ass.
Maybe she can be a stickler sometimes, but at this point, I don't think anyone in the world would be chill with, oh, that's all right.
Yeah.
You've ruined my work, but that's fine.
If I was her, I would just storm into the autopsy room and just swipe everything onto the floor.
I would just desecrate the corpse and be like, oh, sorry, Owen, were you working on that?
Yeah, really, it's so annoying. You're adults.
Yeah.
Unacceptable. I'd fire them.
Yeah. What Tosh does instead is she goes to a bar. And I love Torchwood in bars and clubs.
Me too.
My favourite.
Yeah. At the bar, a woman comes up to her under the guise of, oh God, this man's staring at me. Can you pretend to be my friend? But we quickly find out that that's not the only reason she's come up to Tosh. She also knows everything about her. She knows her family history and where she's worked and stuff. And Tosh is very confused at this. It's like, what's going on? She's like, I know who you are. People like me are scavengers. We find all this stuff online. Why is that online? Also later, Tosh references it and she's like annoyed that Mary has implied that she knows her very well as a person. And she's like, oh, so you think you know me just because you found my CV online?
Yeah.
And I'm like, Tosh, what is your CV doing online? Like, you just like, Toshiko Sato, LinkedIn. We're not in the realm of you getting hired by like sending CVs out, are you? Like before she worked for Torchwood, she worked for like the government. Mary even says she was like swiped up by a government think tank.
Yeah.
Really young. What's her CV doing on the internet, Steph?
I think it's not, though.
Okay, you just think...
She can read minds. I think that's how she's doing it.
Yeah, you got a point there. But Tosh, I know she's joking.
But Tosh does think it's plausible that she got it online.
Yeah, because I know she's joking. She's like, oh, because you found my CV on the internet, you think you know everything about me. But I mean, it just seems to me like her CV is on the internet.
Yeah, because she does say, born in London, moved to Osaka when you were 2, moved back when you were 9, worked, got snapped up at 20, worked for a government think tank, and then 3 years ago you were recruited for Torchwood. And Toshiko's only question is, how do you know about Torchwood?
Yeah.
So everything else, that's available.
Yeah, what year? It's 2006, right?
Yeah.
So, maybe she's vlogging on YouTube. Maybe,
she's
got a blog. I went into work today. Owen and Gwen broke my computer software.
Maybe she's changed the names.
Software. Don't think she
maybe she works for Wood Torch when she keeps...
maybe, yeah. Or maybe she works for Doctor Who.
Yeah.
They'll never figure it out.
It's an anagram. No one will ever know. One point I really want to make is about what Mary seems to be when you first meet her. She's quite posh, but talks quite violently. What she says is, there's a guy trying to hit on me, and I know where that leads. It leads to me punching him, and I get barred from the bar, and I've already been barred from 20 different pubs. Yeah. I don't want to be barred from another. And I have met people like this, who are like a little bit posh, and talking this, oh, like, I'm fine and everything, but, like, if you talk to me much longer, I was going to have to punch him. And, like, I don't want to have to do that because it's really annoying to get banned from pubs. And, like, that is a personality type I find insufferable. So, just on that level, if I was Tosh, I'd be thinking, I don't want to spend time with you. Yeah. But on the other hand, I wonder if this is slightly a performance choice.
I think so, yeah.
The actor's good, I think, but she's chosen to play the role in a way that wouldn't have been my preference. I think the way this story goes, I'd have preferred a sort of slightly wilder, just a little bit more manic, perhaps. Maybe that's it, actually. I realise it's a problematic trope by now, but she's meant to be the manic pixie dream girl trope, right? A little bit.
I guess so.
She's the person who's suddenly a lot of fun. The one person Tosh is like, yes, someone I can talk to properly the way that I can never talk to my colleagues. And someone who just sort of lands in her lap, offering adventure and excitement.
But on the other hand, she kind of knows what Tosh's personality is like. She's very controlling.
True.
And regardless of how we feel about it, she knows what will get Tosh to talk to her. She jumps in and doesn't give her a choice. She starts with, that guy's staring at me, like, pretend to be my friend to get out of it.
Yeah.
With something that puts so much confidence in that a shy person like Tosh can't really send her away.
Yeah.
And then by the time they're talking, she negs her throughout the whole episode.
Yeah. And
I think maybe that's like... I think it works. I would have preferred if she played it in a different way, but actually looking at Tosh's reactions, I think she's just so confident Tosh can't refuse it, right? And that's what she's like.
So the reason you've won me over is because the one person we know Tosh has previously been romantically interested in is Owen.
Who is an asshole.
Who negs all the time.
That makes sense.
So, yeah.
This is more about Tosh's self-esteem issues than anything else, I guess.
It's really upsetting that the way you seduce Toshiko Sato in a pub is by being an absolute dick.
Yeah, clearly it works.
Clearly it does work, because later on we see Tosh and Mary properly bonding. Tosh has a moment of, I shouldn't do this. This isn't the Torchwood way.
The Torchwood way, which is that opens up so much sadness to right. Episode 1, one member of staff got so sucked in and went mad and murdered 3 people.
Yeah.
She was so sucked into the work. She was like, I can't share this with anyone. This is insane. And then Jack was like, oh, Gwen will be good. I think you're right. We're too clinical. And probably thinking, I should be more careful with my staff. Then Yanto hides his cyber girlfriend in the basement. He's like, God, I really should maybe check on people more. Tosh is so sad that all it takes is one confident blonde woman to come up to her, and she's pouring all of these classified secrets at her because she's so desperate to have a conversation with someone. That is so sad. She's like, the guys at work, I mean, they're great, but they just don't think of it like I do. And I'm like, Jack!
She has no one in her life.
Look after your staff.
Yes.
Jesus.
How many times do you have to learn the lesson that these incredibly obsessive, isolated staff members really need more aftercare than they're getting?
Yeah.
The other thing we get here is a major theme for this episode, which is that Tosh is getting dragged down by the idea that everywhere you look, everything's awful. Every species in the universe goes to war. That's what she's discovered, is war is permanent and forever. And I think it's very easy as human beings, like if you're on Twitter too much, to get dragged down by the idea that everything is awful. You just hear story after story of wrongness, and those end up speaking to you louder than stories of positivity. And Tosh is saying, but, the other day I found a letter, and it was a father writing to his kids because he missed them, and like an alien dad, which I would watch as a spin-off. So she's finding these little moments of joy in the world, but it's hard. That's where she's at. And then Mary offers her a gift.
And the gift is a pendant. As soon as Tosh puts it on, suddenly she's overwhelmed by overhearing voices. And what the voices are people's internal monologue. She is reading the thoughts of everyone in the bar. And because it's her first go, it takes a bit of practice, she can't shut it out and focus on one. She's having a bad time. She hears a guy at the bar on the phone thinking about her and her reactions to the pendant. We get lots of very funny thoughts throughout the episode. And Mary is like, control it, hone in on my voice, just hear my thoughts. But we don't yet know what the pendant is, where it's from, or all we know is that, wow, this thing makes you read thoughts.
Yeah. So what I think is interesting is there are several scenes in this episode where Tosh overhears the thoughts of strangers. I think there's 3 or 4 scenes like that, and this is the first one. It's interesting to me that the thoughts are thematically different in each scene. So in this first scene, the thoughts are very ordinary. We've got a guy thinking about his Sudoku. We've got someone with anxiety about admin in work. Or did I click reply all? We get a woman who is clocking that a man is being sort of predatorially pervy, perhaps. That is not as dark as we will go. This is kind of a sort of unfortunately low level, normal level of creepiness.
Yeah.
There's a guy who's considering, I'll have another drink, I'll just drive slowly. We get a woman going, does coffee count as a food if there's sugar in it? Sort of anxious about her diet. So they're all, again, some of them are a bit dodgy, but none of them are earth-shatteringly dodgy.
Yeah. When Mary tells her to focus on just her thoughts, what Tosh hears is that Mary wants to kiss her. And then we now know this is all fake. And Mary's like, oh God, I'm so embarrassed. Sometimes you can't control it. And Tosh is like, look, don't worry. I get it. It's fine. What the hell is this? And they have a chat about it. Mary says it's been in the family for a while.
Yeah.
Is that her line? And that she says she's had it for a while. After too long, just gets inside you a bit. I don't want it anymore. You can have it. And does Tosh say, I'll have to show it to the people at work?
Yes.
And Mary says, I bet that you won't.
Yeah.
And that's where the scene kind of ends, isn't it?
Yes.
Steph, what is your favourite? Let's play around.
Yeah.
What is your favourite overheard thought in this
My
scene?
favourite overheard thought in this scene is, I'm not showing that to a doctor.
My favourite overheard one is the guy who is thinking about Tosh. He's like, oh, what's wrong with that girl over there? Something's going on. Is that her girlfriend? Then his mind drifts to a friend of his who says that he's done it with 2 lesbians. And he's trying to work out the logistics of how that would work. And he says, how does that work then? Does one of them just sort of stand off to the side? Which I love, because I love the idea that the only way he can imagine a threesome is like, well, they're both here for me. So if I'm having sex with one of them, what's the other one up to?
They'll take it in turns.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
It's very good.
That's really good.
So after that scene, we see Tosh go to work. She walks in. She presses a button to get in that we've not seen before.
Yeah.
So she goes into Bayanto's desk and she just presses a button under the till desky area that just opens the door.
Yeah.
I think there should be a little bit more security there.
Yeah.
That's a bit odd.
At the very...
What if that was a pizza girl, you know?
Yeah.
You can't be too sure.
At the very least, that should be a 4-digit code.
Yeah. Maybe it's biometric.
Oh, true.
Maybe it's fingerprint. We'll just pretend.
Yeah.
She walks in and she puts the pendant on. We start to hear Owen and Gwen's thoughts, which are flirty. We find out that they have had sex a second time in Owen's car. We find out that they can't stop thinking about each other, basically. But we also get little bits of just their internal thoughts. My favourite thought that's read in this one is Gwen being angry about someone in the police.
Yes.
And says, I should put a weevil in his bathroom. I really like that, just as like
So
a passing
good.
comment.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting as well because the reason she's annoyed at the colleague is because he's annoyed that she barely gets in touch anymore.
Sure.
You know, he's made a crack about, oh, Gwen, you're phoning, are you? And she's going, oh, grr. But
Grr.
we know that Gwen is becoming more disconnected from the outside world.
Yeah.
So, you know, he's probably touched a nerve.
Mm-hmm.
But also always a pleasure to have a Weevil mention.
Always a pleasure.
Gwen also judges Tosh's fashion, which...
She says the boots and the jeans thing has really had its day.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what era was boots and jeans completely unacceptable as a fashion choice?
Boots and jeans...
It's timeless.
Absolutely.
Absolutely timeless.
Yeah. It's also really strange to me to think that Gwen is making serious fashion choices. She looks cool, but that's because she's in a sci-fi show where everyone looks cool.
Yeah.
The idea that she's like Captain Fashion surprises me.
Lest we forget her rubbish t-shirt from a few episodes
Yes.
ago, from the like H&M kids rack. So weird.
Yeah.
But also, like, what's Tosh meant to wear? Is it only Converse, Gwen? Is
Yeah.
that the only acceptable shoe? Very
she should
weird.
wear Converse and her hair down in the wind.
Yeah.
So Tosh also overhears Owen's thoughts and he's imagining what Tosh would be like in bed. But in the most horrible possible way. Like, he's not looking and going, oh, she's really attractive. He's doing exactly what we've come to expect of Owen, which is objectifying her for the sake of objectifying her.
Yeah.
He's just, what would she be like in bed? I bet she'd be Catholic but grateful. Achavi. Not a fan. And that does fit, to my mind, with what Owen is, which is just constantly sexualizing everyone. But that does not mean there is a meaningful romantic connection there.
Yeah. I don't remember where I saw this once. Someone had said online, or like, your real personality is the first thought you have when you look at someone. And someone had been like, I completely disagree. It's the second thought. Your first thought is the one you've kind of been like socialized to say. And your second one is the real you.
Yeah.
So you might see someone wearing something a bit out of the ordinary and you're like, oh my God, what are they wearing? And you correct yourself in your head and be like, no, it's lovely. I'm glad that they are wearing something they like. I hope they have a great day. And I think we're all kind of doing that on some level.
Yeah.
And I like to think that this first thought thing, the reason it's so bad is because you're just getting those first thoughts.
Yeah.
Gwen is a woman. She's a woman in her 20s. She's got some level of internalized misogyny thing. And the boots with the jeans comment, it's not really her. It's just that's the thought you have. You see something that you wouldn't wear and you say something mean about it. And Owen's one is the same, like just blah, 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 what should be like a bed, blah, blah, blah. And I think these are actually quite disconnected from what their real personalities are.
I think that's
like
true.
that's why they're just sort of glazed over thoughts of like, I should put Weevil in his bathroom. None of it is real. It's such that like surface level stuff.
Yeah.
That I'm more forgiving of it.
I really, really like that reading. Because later Mary says, these are the thoughts that are so deep down that they don't even know they think them.
Yeah.
Which I don't agree with, because I think they're expressed in language. We know that she doesn't just get language, she also gets images. Later on, she sees Mary imagining some very exciting graphic sex. So we're hearing the words that she's hearing. I think if you've got a thought that's expressed as words in your head, you're aware of it.
It's pretty thought through, yeah. But then also you have to be forgiving of the fact that how else would we communicate it?
True.
Maybe we should assume that she's not actually hearing words.
Yeah.
She is hearing concepts and that the people thinking them aren't really aware of those concepts. But
so I like the idea that it's, like your point, that if you walk into a shop and you see the person behind the counter, you immediately have a quick, that person's attractive, or that person's old. You know, probably like just a really unflattering, something you wouldn't want to admit that you'd even thought. And that's what you're getting. I really like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it feels true because so many of the thoughts we get are really brutal and really very unfiltered and unedited.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, in the hub, she's kind of overwhelmed by all these thoughts. She definitely gets the idea of Owen and Gwen's affair. Is very frustrated that all of their internal thoughts are more about each other than anything paying attention to her. She tries to tell them something, but she's so kind of bombarded by all these thoughts that she kind of stumbles over her words and doesn't manage to get any thoughts out. She then goes to her desk to sit down to be like, that was ridiculous. And Yanto happens to walk past and she hears his internal thoughts, which are so heartbreaking. Yeah. He is still deep in the depths of grief. He says, there's not an inch of me that doesn't hurt. Feels like there are rats in my stomach. And that's just what he's got going in his head all the time.
Yeah.
And it's really nice to get an actual look into that. Like, what episode are we on? This is episode 7. So
3 episodes.
3 episodes since Lisa. I mean, obviously, when you say 3 episodes, it makes sense. But in their timeline, it's so easy to forget that this has happened.
Yeah.
And I like that they're giving us a reminder of it every episode. Yanto comes out of his really miserable internal monologue to be like, I'm putting on some of Jack's special coffee. Would you like a cup? And Tosh comes out of her head and is like, no, I'm fine. Thank you. Kind of being like, wow, I need to thank you, Yanto. Yeah. But it's interesting that that's the point at which she takes it off.
Yes.
She has found out about Owen and Gwen's affair via reading their thoughts, invading their privacy, which I know she has an issue with anyway.
Yeah.
But it was really interesting to me that that is the moment that she feels like she's invaded their privacy too much. That's her line, that she's like, whoa, this is too personal. What am I doing? This is wrong, and takes it off.
Yeah, this to me is a really definitive Yanto moment, because we realize, oh, this is him all the time. And it probably was what he was like even before Lisa's death, because she'd already been converted into a cyber woman. She was already not well. So the idea that Yanto is just constantly in pain, constantly grieving, but pushes that down to just very politely offer you a cup of tea. And that's who he is.
Yeah.
I like that moment.
From there, Tosh goes home from work, which is just around the corner, isn't it? Yeah. Just around the corner. And sitting on the wall opposite her house is Mary. Tosh is like, of course, obviously you'd have my address. And she goes in. Mary just follows her in, because that's apparently what we're doing.
Yeah. This is where Mary explains to Tosh, like, don't worry about what you're hearing. Although, again, this is probably manipulation, because we realise later, no, Mary's plan is to cause a rift between Tosh and the others.
Of course, yeah.
But I think right now it's all about, don't stop wearing the pendants, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
It's if anything, it's encouraging her to keep using. But then also this leads to a sexy scene where I quite like this, where Tosh is like, whoa, it's graphic what you're thinking right now. And she says, I'm not thinking anything. That's your thoughts.
And then Tosh goes, I certainly seem to be enjoying myself.
Yeah.
It's very good.
And then they go off and have sex.
Yeah, they sort of have a quick chat about what Tosh has heard and experienced while wearing the pendant and work. She's very upset. She says, these people are supposed to like me. They're supposed to be my friends, but they pity me. And Mary uses that to be like, yeah, they do, but I don't pity you, babe.
Yeah.
And kind of gets a little closer to her. But it's like, yeah, Tosh is really struggling with the idea that these people are not who she thought they were.
Yeah. And the worst thing is that she's sort of right. If you could suddenly read the minds of everyone who loves you, you're bound to hear some unflattering stuff that you'd rather not know. But it doesn't matter, because they love you. And so actually it doesn't matter if they're occasionally a bit judgmental of your behaviour or your appearance or whatever, because you know that there's that love there. Whereas with Tosh, it doesn't feel like people particularly care for her. They actually are quite callous, not just in the things they think, but in the way they treat her as well. The only person who's nice to her is Yanto, and that's because he's sort of on autopilot offering people cups of coffee.
Yeah.
So to me, the worst thing about this experience of Tosh's is she's not wrong. She's not overreacting at all. Yeah. She's absolutely right. No one's fighting her corner.
It's very sad. But anyway, they have sex. Then they wake up and Tosh is... Well, she's not... I mean, she had a good time, right? She's not... But she's a bit like, okay, well, that happened rather quickly.
Yeah.
Just sort of coming to the realisation of that. Mary walks in and says, you have no ashtrays in your whole house, not one. Don't smoke then, idiot. Yeah. You can't find an ashtray in someone's house. You probably shouldn't smoke inside. Yeah. But she just picks an egg cup up. and smokes in with that instead.
This is only a year before the smoking ban in public places in Wales.
Yeah, society had already decided.
But I think smoking in someone's house was always different.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a bit weird, but that's Mary for you.
Yeah.
So during this conversation, Mary comes to the conclusion, or at least claims to come to the conclusion, that Tosh is nervous because she is rebounding from someone, or she is in a relationship with someone else. She sees a card on the fridge from Owen that Tosh has kept and is like, oh, well, I don't want to get in the middle of anything. And Tosh is like, there's nothing to get in the middle of. Don't worry. Mary has been sort of piecing all of this together, clearly to try and know how to get in to Tosh and have the most control over it. The editing of when she's sussing things out is, it's like all those noises, and she's like, secret agent, all these things flying in at the side. Not for me. But I mean, it's a technique, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of what I would think of as mid-2000s editing in this.
At this point, I was thinking, okay, you need someone who because Tosh is kind of back and forth, right? She's like, I fancy this woman, I'm into her, but also, I don't know, this is all a bit dodgy. I feel like the person you would have had the best luck with would be Yanto in this situation.
Yeah.
And I went through this whole thing in my head. I was like, she would have been better off for Yanto. I bet he's desperate for someone to connect with and rebound with. And then I remembered why that wouldn't be a good idea. Because if Yanto walks through the Torchwood doors with any woman, they are going to be ready for that.
Yeah.
We didn't like the last one very much, Yanto. So just want to give this one a once over to make sure she's not going to kill us all.
That's really true. That's such a good point. The other point to make in this scene, I think, is that Toshiko is clearly mourning the loss of the potential relationship with Owen, which is really interesting. And I think people have been through this. This is very relatable. You have a crush on someone. On some level, they're not interested. But it's still devastating when you get confirmation that it's unrequited. Yeah. It's horrible. And
that's why you don't tell them, because you live in the limbo where they might one day, you know. But it's tough for her.
And it depends, right? Because I think sometimes people need to be told no. But Toshiko, she wasn't being inappropriate. She wasn't being pushy. She was just being very sad. Yeah. And okay, she did need to get over it, but this isn't a fun way to get over it.
Amongst that conversation, she tells Mary that she doesn't like the pendant. She's done with it. And again, Mary encourages her to use it. She says it's not just bad stuff. It can be beautiful. You can get beautiful snapshots of humanity. And she basically says, go on, Tosh, give it another go. So Tosh goes for a walk in town onto Queen Street. And I really like this scene.
This is great. Yeah.
Tosh walks around the entrance of Queen's Arcade and gets these really funny snapshots of everybody walking past. Let's play another round, Steph, of what is your favourite overhead thought?
Okay, so once again, there is a theme to these, I think. And last time the theme was that these were sort of ordinary thoughts, even the ones that are a bit dark are kind of very banal and commonplace. I think all of these, the thing that combines them is they're all joyful. They're all slightly funny, and some of them are still a bit dark. Some of them involve secrets, but I think we delight in them more.
Are these people on the way? They're on the way to work, aren't they? Yeah. Because one of them comments on how many cigarettes they've had this morning so far. And it's people changing mode. Yeah. People have been at home. They're going to work. The commute is that time where you think of all those things. That's what's rushing through your head. What is your favourite line?
So my favourite, it's the guy who's in his head thinking, Mr. Bond, I've been expecting you. Just like a geek goes past. But also, I couldn't tell, is there a bit of a sting of like Bond-esque music that he is himself imagining? Yeah.
My favourite one is, some people should actually be prohibited from wearing a thong. I really like that one.
Great. So this scene ends with overhearing a very dark thought, which is Tosh hears a man saying, I'm going to kill them all. I didn't write down exactly what was said, but essentially what we gather is that this guy is going to shoot his ex-wife and maybe his child as well.
Yeah, and then he's going to lie down next to them so that they are all found together.
So, So this is someone very damaged. We know that his ex-wife has moved in with another guy, but as far as Neil, this would-be killer, is concerned, that's just... he's basically just... The
line he says is, then they'll know that what Lawrence is doing is trespassing.
Trespassing. Yeah. Wow. So, so we see a lot of the dark side of sex and relationships here. And here we get the bitter resentment of someone driven to murder.
Mm-hmm.
I do feel I have to make one point about this, which is that Torchwood's cast is predominantly white.
Mm-hmm.
Toshiko is an interesting exception to that as our sort of protagonist this week.
Mm-hmm.
Neil is, I think, the only guest character who's a person of colour, who's not white, other than his own son as well. His ex-wife is white. I feel really weird about it.
Me too.
The dynamic of it. I know how it happened. I can see how this decision gets made, that you've only got a certain number of guest characters. And like in my head, I was going, okay, if you don't make him a person of colour, is it better to make her? Well, then she's a victim.
Yeah.
And that's not great. What about if you make both of them? Then are you making a statement about the relationships of people of colour? That, like, there's no great answer, but this isn't great either.
Yeah, I've been seeing there's a lot of talk online at the moment about colour-blind casting versus colour-conscious casting.
Yeah.
And colour-blind casting is the idea that race is irrelevant to the role, and that can sometimes be good.
Yeah.
But colour-conscious casting is the idea that, yes, it would be nice to be in a world where you can hire anyone for any role. However, the colour of someone's skin is going to have different political and narrative implications. I like to think that it wasn't deliberate, but that's colour-blind casting.
Yeah.
Because if you've got a murderer and you make that murderer a person of colour, that tells a complete different story.
Yeah.
Just like if you'd made the wife a person of colour, if you're watching a person of colour get murdered, that tells a very different story. And I think that's the mistake here. But that's something that made me uncomfortable. Even when I watched this, probably like 2008, I think I watched this, and I'm still a bit like,
I think I was. And also, we don't know the practicalities of filming. We don't know, there are last minute dropouts for things. You never know. But because here's the thing, I think there is a difference between gender and race when you write a script. Because when you write gender, usually you choose the gender of a person in the script. Not always, but generally you'll give a person a name and a description that makes it clear what gender you intend the person to be. With race, you almost like white writers never ever think to specify race in script. So that's a purely casting decision. So that is, okay, these are the roles that are available. Which ones are we offering out to whom? And also who auditioned. Like, there's less control if you don't think about it at script level. And that seems to me to be what happened here. It's just while this was being written, no one thought about how white a cast is this going to be.
Yeah.
And also, maybe when Toshiko Sato is your main character, you're already thinking, oh, this will be fine.
Yeah, it sucks, though. Yeah. It sucks. But so Neil, this guy, is wandering along, narrating the plan to himself. We see him arrive at the house of his ex-wife and his kid, and I think the little bits they give us of that give us quite good context. Like the kid walks past with a Game Boy and she's like, Lawrence got him that. So they're already kind of building up. She's obviously kind of rubbing his face in it a bit, and you can see why the tension is built up. Not an excuse, is it? But yeah, we get the dynamic. He gets a gun out and threatens them, and he's like, don't be scared. It's just like falling asleep, and then we can be together forever. At which point, our hero of the day, Toshiko Sato, comes in with a golf club and smacks him over the back of the head and is like, you're safe now. And she's just saved him from getting murdered. Which, even when Jack talks to her later, don't think enough credit is given to that.
Yeah.
Because that's like, we never see the police investigation. I guess she probably just pulled the Torchwood card, right? So they have to call the police, and she's like, I'm with Torchwood, this is what happened, goodbye. Yeah. But it's all like, that's amazing.
Yeah. The only issue I have with it is I absolutely hate that it's a golf club that is used, because that would have killed him.
Yeah.
Is my feeling.
Well, maybe she did kill him, though. We don't.
Oh, that's true.
Like, we don't need to know.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very sad if she killed him, but the idea is, I don't think it's like.
It's such a threat that there's no.
Yeah. He's holding a gun on a woman and child, you know?
Okay. That's a good point.
I also love the idea that if she did kill him, Tasha's just like, all in a day's work. Because I know she can't tell anyone because she can't admit how she found out.
Yeah.
But it also implies that she's got no issues killing someone.
Yeah.
Which is very fitting for her character,
True.
I think.
Yeah.
So, later that day, we presume, Tosh goes back to work. Just another day. This is one of my favourite scenes in Torchwood. I think this is a really good summary for what the tone of the show should be.
Yes.
Owen is continuing his examination of the skeleton. Gwen is making fun of him and throwing things at him, basically, and Jack is laughing off to the side. When Tosh comes into this, Gwen explains what's going on, which is that Owen was completely wrong about his initial prognosis of what had happened. It wasn't a woman, it was a man, and it wasn't a gunshot wound, it was unidentified trauma. Tosh inquires about that a little bit, but at the moment, it's not that relevant because we don't know the answer. But I really like this scene. They're really playful. They're joking about my favourite line as Tosh leaves. It's just, as it's fading out, it's almost not even, you can't properly hear it. But Gwen's like, where did you train? Did you train? And the delivery of it always really gets me. And it's just a fade out as they go. At which point, Tosh goes to chat to Jack.
So Tosh goes to talk to Jack because the last time she spoke to Mary, she asked her, is Mary even your real name? And Mary said, I can't remember the phrasing, but something like, you can call me Philoctetes if you want. Mm-hmm. She's like, what does that mean? Toshiko Sato, obviously, computer wizard. I've never heard of Philoctetes. I'll look that up on the internet. Except she doesn't do that. What she does instead is she goes to her boss.
But she's keeping this big secret.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To ask about it and to pretend it came up in a pub quiz, which Jack Harkness clearly thinks is nakedly hilarious.
Yeah.
The idea that Toshiko Sato went to a pub quiz. What, with people in a pub?
Yeah. Down at the Prince of Tides. Yeah. Yeah, it's insane. I just feel like Tosh would know that. And if she doesn't, you have a Google, mate.
Yeah.
Have a fucking Google. What's wrong with you?
That said, I was trying to work out why I think Toshiko goes to Jack at this point. And I wonder if it's because she feels so out on the outside of Gwen and Owen. She doesn't want to talk to them. And she's also realised how in his own grief bubble Yanto is. She only has one colleague that she can possibly get on with. And I wonder if this is half an excuse to reach out to someone.
Yeah.
Almost like it's a little testing the waters to see, is there anyone in this team that I can work with?
Yeah.
And
no is the answer.
Yeah. But do you know that feeling sometimes where you've got a friend that you haven't talked to in a while, so you think, oh, I know an excuse to talk to them, and I'll ask them about this, and it's like, you don't really need to know that.
Yeah.
And you message them like, is Breaking Bad worth watching? And you're like, I don't need the answer to that. This is just an excuse.
He does give her the answer though.
But he does give her the answer.
Yeah, that Philoctetes was marooned on an island.
Yeah.
And that's basically all we need to know, right?
That's what's important. Yeah. He was an abandoned man.
Yeah.
So the other thing that's really crucial to mention here is that Toshiko's interrupted a phone call that Jack is having. As she leaves, we find out who's on the phone, and it's the Prime Minister. And it's
who was who at the time?
I choose Tony Blair, right?
It must have been Tony Blair.
Yeah. Some people would argue Gordon Brown because there's a whole thing that Torchwood is set 1 year exactly in the future, but we don't need
whatever.
And also maybe it's Harriet Jones because this is. I mean, there's so many. But I absolutely choose. Actually, no. I want it to be Gordon Brown.
I want it to be Tony Blair.
You want it to be Tony Blair?
Yeah. I just think that's funnier.
The reason he's annoyed, Jack is annoyed that the Prime Minister Tony Blair. The war criminal Tony Blair.
Yeah, all right, we'll go with Gordon Brown.
Has been telling the leader of the opposition about Torchwood in his briefings. Mm-hmm. And Jack's like, now the deal was, and we cut there, so we don't know what the deal was. But the idea was that no, you don't get to tell the leader of the Conservative Party about Torchwood. That's not the system.
That does sound like Gordon Brown.
Yeah.
He's just in. Yeah. He's just taken over. Yeah. There's a few lines like that in random episodes of Torchwood where we're just getting, look, there's Jack doing his job in the background and the things he's saying are ridiculous.
Yeah.
But I really like that.
So the next scene we get is Tosh and Mary in a cafe, and it's sort of not a date. It's sort of hanging out, I think, is what it feels like.
Because she apparently just lives with Tosh now.
Yeah. Well, they're moving fast.
That's lesbians for you.
Yeah. And Mary goes to kiss Tosh, and Tosh is a bit hesitant. And Mary's like, oh, come off it. Mm-hmm. And Tosh goes, yeah, okay. And they do kiss. But Tosh feels very sort of, I'm not sure. I don't know if that hesitancy is because she's just generally worried about public displays of affection, or whether it's because I'm out in public with a woman. I feel like this is her first relationship with a woman. I don't know how you feel.
Yeah, I think so too.
And maybe her first relationship. It doesn't necessarily mean she's never had any encounters with women before. But I don't think she's used to just being out in public with anyone who might be a girlfriend.
Yeah, I think it is about doing a gay kiss in public. Yeah. She gives in very easily though. She clearly wants to kiss her.
Absolutely.
As soon as she's like any kind of like, go on, then she's like, yeah, all right. I also really like, so Mary's giving her the kiss to say, you've been incredibly brave and sexy for saving those people's lives. And I'm glad someone's given her some credit for it.
Yeah.
Someone cares about Tosh's life.
Yes.
Maybe a manipulative alien, but very good.
Yeah. So what I think is really interesting is we have two relationships in this episode, both of which are secret.
Mm-hmm.
And they are secret for different reasons.
Very different reasons.
Very different. One of those relationships is an affair between a man and a woman.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them is, perfectly... I mean, we know that one of them is a manipulative alien, but we'll put that aside and say that these are two single consenting women who have absolutely no reason not to engage in a relationship. All right, Tosh is telling her torturous stuff that she shouldn't be telling, but the relationship itself, there shouldn't be anything to be ashamed of.
Yeah.
So that's what's interesting to me, is that the privacy here is still, because even in 2006, and hey, even today,
mm-hmm.
it can be really frightening to be out as a same-sex couple.
Yeah.
And there is this idea that actually Gwen and Owen are slightly reveling in it. Very, very public, messing about, constantly flirting,
mm-hmm.
doing all the things Tosh can't do.
Mm-hmm.
Although there's lots of other reasons why, I do feel like one of the points this episode is making is, if you're a man and a woman, even if your relationship is just definitely wrong and like is hurting, at the very least it's hurting Reese, it's probably unprofessional, it's sort of hurting Tosh, mm-hmm. whether that's fair or not, but they can still just like openly flirt and have a little, and they can have sex in the car and then still maybe sneak off. Or can we sneak off somewhere? Oh no, there's weevils down there.
Yeah, they wanted to have sex in the cells. In the cells. Horrible.
The weevil is the only thing stopping them.
Yeah,
from
not
having
the
sex.
fact that it's at work. It's disgusting. It's cold, and there's cameras. Nah.
Yeah. Oh, we know that Owen would film it.
Yeah,
watch
true.
it back. So I think that's a really sort of very poignant moment that feels quite real to me,
mm-hmm.
In an episode where obviously so much of it's heightened by sci-fi.
Although Tosh is quite a reserved person anyway.
That's
you could
true.
also read it as she's just scared.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're chatting about what she did, and then the conversation turns to the fact that Tosh didn't tell any of the others about the pendant.
Yeah.
And Mary's like, I knew you wouldn't. Because Mary says, why have they got you doing paperwork? Haven't you got a secretary for that?
Yeah. So I can't remember what she says, but I know what she's up to, which is she's trying to make her suspicious of Jack.
Yeah.
Because ultimately she needs Tosh to be suspicious of everyone, and at the minute she's not suspicious of Jack.
So yeah, Tosh tells Mary that she hadn't told the others about her saving of those people as well, and that's kind of what starts that conversation.
Yes. Right? And it takes us to a point where Mary's going, maybe you can't trust Jack.
Yeah. Which
Toshiko's a bit defensive about.
Mm-hmm.
And now Mary, who previously was saying, look, the stuff that you hear, the thoughts, they're nothing, you can ignore them. But now she's going, no, you should indulge this. You should lean into being paranoid of your boss.
Mm-hmm.
But what it leads to is Tosh is going to try and use the pendant on Jack.
Sure. This is a scene where I really like Mary's delivery of stuff. Where she's like, no, if he's keeping stuff from you, there's bound to be a reason. And Tosh's reaction is like, no, is he? She's planting seeds and it's working a little too well.
Yes.
So Tosh heads back to the hub to try and use the pendant on Jack.
She sees Owen here, and I want to talk about Owen's costume. Because I don't know if you've noticed what he was wearing in this scene. He is wearing like a grungy t-shirt, like a faded band t-shirt, and a lab coat over it. Yeah. And the lab coat has loads of badges on it. Oh. I love that costume.
Actually, he's got a lot of badges. Yeah, I've seen his lab coat with the badges on it before, and I've tried to look at what they are, because that's one of the things where the costume design is really good.
Yeah.
We'll need to pick out what they are.
Yeah.
Because that's so cute.
It's really cute. That makes me like Owen more.
Yeah. Yeah. Tosh walks down into the autopsy room. Owen is still working on the skeleton and trying to work out what's happened. He's been checking historical rituals to see if that was something they did. He's like, nope, nothing, can't figure it out. And there's an excellent line where he says, does that remind you of anything? And Tosh says, that bit in Alien, where that thing bursts out of John Hurt's chest.
And he says, anything helpful?
Helpful, yeah.
Love his delivery of that.
Because also that little interaction shows that they do have a friendship.
Yeah.
And even though there's stuff going on in his head in the background, especially when Gwen turns up, that's a friendship. Yeah. And it's such a shame. I wonder if also maybe the reason Tosh is so lonely right now is maybe her and Owen had more of a friendship before Gwen came along, but now that he gets on better with her, she's starting to feel isolated.
Yes. Because who was there before? Susie Costello.
Mm-hmm.
doesn't seem that Susie had much of a relationship to any of them.
Yeah. Gwen then turns up, and in Owen and Gwen's minds, you can hear them being like, don't look at me, don't look at him, don't look at him. Why is he not looking at me? Why is he not looking at me? And they're desperately trying to appear normal whilst having a conversation.
And there's a lovely line where, so I think Owen is investigating and has put a file on Gwen's desk or something, and it's about a guy who is still seeing Cybermen outside his mother's house.
Yeah.
Which is lovely.
I just really like that.
Yeah.
But then also Gwen says, I'll have to check, see if he's got a history of mental illness. Is that so that they could play it off as that? Because why would they not be dealing with that?
Yeah.
You know? I got the impression that it wasn't what's the reason for this. It's how can we make this
That wasn't
normal?
My reading. I read it as, there shouldn't be any Cybermen right now. So we'll check if there's a history of mental illness. Because if so, that's probably why. Mm-hmm. If not, I guess we have to trek down there and investigate.
Could always just check the CCTV first.
True. That's true.
But fine, it's Torchwood. And then finally, when she realises that they're not paying any attention to her whatsoever, she is like, I have to go. My desk is on fire. And obviously, neither of them notice it, and they just carry on. She heads to Jack, because as Mary has sent her to do, she's going to try and find out more information. My favourite thing about this scene, he comes in initially, and he says, I just got off the phone with the police, is it?
Yeah.
And basically, he has found out about her saving that family the day before. And he's like, why didn't you say anything? Tosh tries to ask Jack about the machine and if he's found anything out about it, like Mary's asked her to do, but he tells her the investigation is ongoing and refuses to disclose any more information. As they're talking, Jack starts to sort of investigate the ship. And what he does is he just holds it this way and swaps his hand, holds it the other way. And they've obviously just been like, okay, John, just act like you're inspecting it.
Yeah.
But it's so funny to watch because he's just like, you know, back and forth with his hands doing absolutely nothing, squeezing the little spikes on this device back and forth. And I can't take my eyes off it the whole time. What is he doing?
That's so funny.
There's no shit. He'd be better off just touching it and looking at different angles, but that's not what he's doing. It's so weird. I love it so much. It's maybe the worst acting I've ever seen from John Barrowman. Like, that he's like, I don't know what to do with this thing. I'm just going to touch it. Lightly caressing this metal spike. Very odd.
That's so funny. Because I want to talk about this prop again. Because again, we know what we're going to find out. It's a transporter. And the big twist is that it's a true person transporter. And I think in this scene, we get a really good look at it. It's very clearly symmetrical. It reminds me of the Ghost Machine, actually, from episode 3, where once you know that it's a two-person transporter, you go, of course it's for two people. Yeah. It looks like it's for two people. So yeah, again, quality prop design.
But yeah, Jack questions her on what she did, and she's like, well, you know, I didn't want it to seem like I was showing off, trying to come up with an excuse for why she didn't tell anyone. And he says, it's interesting, the guy said that you knew that that's what he was going to do because he was muttering about it to himself under his breath. It's just a bit weird, you know, because if I'm going to murder someone, I'm really careful not to say it out loud. And she's like, oh, I know, right? That's lesson 1. He's on to her.
Yeah.
She turns to leave, and then she puts the pendant on. She turns back to try and read his mind. And we see that he sort of looks up. He knows that someone's trying to get in there. He knows it's Tosh. And he plays it off like, why are you staring at me, Tosh? Have I got something on my face? She says, I just zoned out. And he does a very good, like, well, listen, that was a good save, Tosh.
Yeah.
And obviously what he means is good save, not admitting that you're trying to read my thoughts.
Yeah.
But he plays it off like he's talking about her rescue from the day before. Yeah. I really like that. I assume that now what Jack does is he goes to, I mean, probably what he did as soon as he found out what she'd done saving those people is he starts to look at what's going on. Yeah. Because that's how he pieces everything together. So he probably checks the CCTV, sees what she's been up to, and is like, oh dear, I seem to have let something slip a bit. Like, yeah. I've not had my eye on another member of my team. None of them are safe. It's happened again.
So here's a question. Why can't Toshiko read Jack's mind?
I just think he's really trained at it. When he meets Rose, does he say something about some level of psychic training?
That is something that comes up. I can't remember a specific thing.
My assumption is that as a time agent, they had some kind of psychic training.
Yes.
And he's very well trained at controlling his thoughts, and that is why he can get through it.
So that's what I assumed. Mm-hmm. But then later in the episode, Tosh says to him, when I tried to read your mind, it was like there was nothing there. It was like you were dead. Mm-hmm. So the implication of the episode seems to be that it's the fact that he died that means his thoughts can't be read anymore. which I don't like as a theory.
And that also can't be true because he can talk to her in her mind.
That's true.
Which is a thought.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
I don't like that idea.
Fair enough.
I do think it's just that he's psychic trained.
Yeah. So Toshiko goes back to Mary and confesses that she's feeling ashamed about listening to people's thoughts. And it's interesting that it's failing to read Jack's thought that triggers that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's very true. It's a bit of a wake-up call. When you're just reading people's thoughts successfully, you can just present yourself as a passive observer.
Mm-hmm.
But as soon as you've tried and failed, you have to be honest with yourself and admit
that's true, yeah.
you were trying to invade someone's privacy and couldn't.
Yeah.
So it feels very true to me that this is what brings on the shame.
Mm-hmm. So Mary's kind of consoling Tosh. Tosh says she's done with the pendant. She tries to give it back to Mary. She says, I'm gonna give it to Jack. I'm gonna hand it to the team. I can't put up with this anymore. Mary's like, you can't do that because then they'll ask questions about where you got it from, and I don't want them being led back to me. And Tosh is confused by that. Why would they be? She's like, don't worry, they're just gonna ask you a few questions. She's like, no, there's someone I haven't told you. If I go into Torchwood, I won't come out again. And has to explain to Tosh that she's an alien.
Yeah.
So Mary suddenly gets this demon voice.
Yeah.
Which is never repeated.
No.
Just like, this is an alien.
We hear this once.
Yeah.
Now.
She was like, put that down or something. And Tosh is like, wow, that doesn't sound very human. Mary reveals herself to be a very, very pretty alien. An alien that is also used in Sarah Jane. Is that right?
She is, yeah.
So they obviously just copy, paste, done.
Yeah.
That's how you do CGI, isn't it? Easy peasy. And Tosh is a bit surprised that Mary's an alien. The line she has is, so I'm shagging a woman and an alien. She's like, which is worse? She's like, well, I know which one my parents would say. I like to think it's alien.
I like to think it's alien. Yeah, strong belief.
So Mary doesn't want to go into Torchwood because she says she'll be like tested on, she'll be trapped, she'll be imprisoned. She knows what that place does. But then this is the bit I don't understand. She's like, all right, get me into Torchwood. So Mary doesn't want her to hand the pendant in because she knows it'll be led back to her and then she'll be captured. But she's quite happy to walk into the hub.
Yeah.
Just fully assuming that no one's going to be like, are you an alien? Like, there's going to be something that gives it away.
Yeah.
She must have known about Torchwood for a long while. She must know who Jack is. Yeah. And yet, no, it's fine. So at this point, Jack is standing on a roof.
That's what he does.
That is what he does. Meanwhile, at the hub, Owen is starting to piece something together. He's found a common thing of people having the exact same injury as the skeleton that he's looking at. And he does that classic TV thing. Owen picks up the phone and he goes, you need to see this, and flicks it closed, and that's it.
Yeah.
Like, hey guys, I think you might want to take a look at this. It's that classic one. It's very good. And Tosh also goes for one last walk, right?
Yeah. And we get her walking past the stadium in central Cardiff. Again, listens in to the thoughts of people. And the theme of the first time was sort of banal, normal thoughts. The theme the second time was sort of slightly joyful, slightly funny thoughts. These are the darkest, most horrible thoughts. There is a running theme to these thoughts that they are all related to emotional or physical or sexual abuse. There's a strong theme of childhood and children throughout this. So some people are sort of remembering being abused as children. Others have themselves abused children. Horrible, just the worst of humanity. So what I take from this is that if you're out in Cardiff, boring people hang out in the bar, fun people walk down Queen Street, and the worst people in the world go by the stadium.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, in real life in Cardiff, people do not just walk down that strip.
No.
Even before.
Yeah.
Like, that's not a common walkway. What are they all doing?
What are they all doing?
Is it a club?
Yeah.
Maybe that's why they all have the same theme of thoughts.
Maybe some alien has crashed a spaceship on the opposite side of the river.
Maybe.
People are having to go around.
That makes sense.
So Tosh goes back to Mary, and she is just distraught. In my head, she's sort of, I don't know, splayed over the bed. She can't even. She's done. She's 100% done. And what she says is that she's just feels full up of the depravity of human beings. Like she is drowning in it. Like she's got depravity in her hair. And, I don't know, down her blouse or whatever. And
dribbling it.
Yeah. And here's my theory now, is that the thoughts, if you're only talking to one person, you hear their thoughts. But if you're surrounded by people, you're drawn to particular thoughts. And the thoughts you're drawn to depends on how you're feeling.
Sure.
So when she's in the bar, she's in a fairly neutral position. So she's hearing sort of normal thoughts. But when she's being told by Mary, go out and listen to thoughts. She's hearing fun ones because she's in a fun mood herself. She's like, okay, she's quite excited about this new relationship.
So it's like a trip.
Yeah.
It's like a shrooms trip.
Yes.
Yeah, when you go down one emotional route, it sours it.
Yeah.
She's having a bad pendant trip right now.
She is. Bad pendant trip. She's gone out already in a bad mood. And so she's hearing the worst thoughts anyone's hearing. So they go to the hub. Tosh is indeed taking Mary into Torchwood. As they go, they're quoting Kubla Khan. There are a lot of classical allusions in this episode.
Mm-hmm.
I've not looked them up. Not interested. Especially Kubla Khan, which I think is just... This really feels like a reference for a reference's sake.
Yeah.
But do you know what?
And it's just Mary.
Yeah.
She's just announcing it. Like, you go somewhere new, you're just like reciting this to yourself.
Yeah.
No one knows you're there yet. Don't draw attention to yourself.
He's so weird.
Tosh and Mary make their way into the hub. Mary has told Tosh that it's a transporter, that she got marooned here because it broke and she couldn't get back. She said that her people were enslaved and had to learn to communicate via reading thoughts to protect themselves so people couldn't intercept their thoughts. So Tosh thinks Mary has very innocent reasons for wanting to get it back. She's like, this is all a misunderstanding. Just tell Jack. I'm sure it'll be fine. They make their way into the hub. And Jack starts coming down the stairs to announce some casual transphobia, not befitting of Torchwood and not befitting of a 51st century man.
Yeah.
The line he says is he's setting up this big, like, here's the hero moment where I've pieced everything together and here's my big speech. So he's coming down the stairs and he says, he's telling them a story. I had a friend called Vincent. One day he starts acting kind of strange. He was a regular guy, you know, liked a beer, sports, whatever. And then suddenly he disappears. He comes back a couple months later and we've got to start calling him Vanessa. So ever since then, I've always been a bit cautious when a friend starts acting out of character. And he says that with like a level of disdain.
Yeah.
It's like, he's like, and all of a sudden we've got to start calling him Vanessa. So he's, I guess, talking about a trans friend.
Yeah.
He's misgendering her.
Yeah.
And it's all said like, that was a weird thing. Got to look out for that.
Yeah.
To get through that, if you remove Jack's tone, you could read it as him being like, had this friend once who went through this thing and disappeared and didn't tell any of us. So I've always been a bit cautious when friends act out of character now to make sure they haven't got anything upsetting going on in the background that I could help them with. That isn't it, but I have to, because otherwise it doesn't make sense for Jack as a character. He's kind. It also doesn't make sense how that got through Torchwood, because I know that the LGBs aren't always the nicest to the T's. And particularly, 2006, transphobia was a lot more acceptable. Yeah. It's not even really unacceptable now. There's a lot of casual things that are just okay when they shouldn't be. But for Torchwood...
So I don't know. Because I hate the line so much, I want to find other readings of it too. Mm-hmm. And also I slightly want to I have an instinct to let the team who made this off the hook. Because I like the team who made this and I like the show. Mm-hmm. I don't think that's a good instinct. I also don't think I necessarily feel like I want to tear them to shreds over this, because I think I'm the kind of person who likes to give some benefit of the doubt. Mm-hmm. I'm also aware it is not my place to give benefit of the doubt here. So I'm happy to leave it as, I hate it.
I hate it too.
I feel really strange about it being in there. Mm-hmm. And I fix it for myself. I really like your fix. Mm-hmm. In my mind, Kim's contribution to Torchwood is to edit that.
Yeah, it just also doesn't make sense bringing it back to the context of the show and the character. Jack is from the 51st century.
Yeah,
are you honestly telling me that in the 51st century we still have the binary gender that we have on Earth right now? Is that really? Yeah. Of course not. And the fact that Jack's like, oh, I had this friend, and then he went weird. No.
Yeah.
Doesn't make any sense.
The fact that Jack still refers to this person as he routinely. Whereas the thing I loved about Captain Jack Harkness when I first met that character in Doctor Who was the fact that he was from so far into the future that everyone defaults to bisexual. Mm-hmm. I loved that. I thought that was really exciting as an idea. And I think that meant a lot to me. And, and still does actually for me as a bisexual man now. I quite like the idea that in the future, maybe it's not that everyone is bisexual, but it's opt out rather than opt in.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It's really sad that there was an opportunity here potentially to do something similar for the trans community, for Jack to go, oh, being trans is so completely normal now. It wouldn't take much of a rewrite for him to go, I had a friend who was trans and I didn't realize it. Mm-hmm. Whereas being trans is so normal where I'm from. I should have seen it straight away.
Yeah.
But it just goes to show you never can completely know.
Mm-hmm.
And so ever since then, I learned a valuable lesson that if my friend is going through something and their behavior suddenly changed, I should pay attention and ask why.
I just need to know where it came from, how it got in there. It's bizarre. Particularly because in modern episodes of Doctor Who, the Doctor is now a woman.
Yeah.
And Jack meets the Doctor again and immediately switches pronouns and is like, now I'm not saying the Doctor is trans. I think it's it's dangerous territory to compare those two things.
Yes.
But clearly he's alien enough that the concept of gender is flexible via species and person, and it doesn't matter to him. So, yeah.
Through Doctor Who and Torchwood, we've met genderless species or intersex species. We there are plenty of challenges to a gender binary among the fictional aliens of this show alone. So,
Very weird. But anyway, he finishes his speech and makes his way to the bottom of the stairs where he announces to Mary that he knows who she is, basically. So
Owen's realised that the common thread to the victims is that they've had their heart removed. And what he's worked out is that this has happened because the possessed Mary, the alien Mary, has the strength to plunge her hand into a person's heart and to tear it out. And that's what's been happening. But there's an interesting little moment that's addressed here, which is that Owen saw one of these victims as a doctor before he worked for Torchwood.
Yeah.
6 months into the job, someone comes in with their heart torn out. That stayed with him.
Yeah.
And he's suddenly realising it was you.
Yeah.
So that's
cool.
Just this nice little personal moment.
Yeah, I like it. Tosh tries to clarify that, no, don't worry, guys. It's a transporter. She's just come here to get it back. And Jack is like, no, you're right. It is a transporter. It's a 2-person transporter for a guard and a prisoner. She wasn't really marooned. She killed the guard. And she also killed all those people that Owen has figured out. They're starting to piece it together. Owen starts to have the idea that now she's a threat, maybe he could quickly get a knife to her. Was that the plan?
Yeah.
But because she can read people's thoughts, she's onto that. And very quickly, she moves in a way we have never seen her done before. She grabs Tosh and is threatening her with a knife to her throat.
Yeah.
At which point, everything's really scary. Tosh has the pendant on.
Yes.
Didn't see that happen, but that's happening. And they're all panicking. Mary suggests, I'm not just threatening Tosh. Maybe I'll swap for Gwen. And we hear Owen's thoughts saying, no, not Gwen. And Mary uses that for Tosh. Like, do you hear what he said? He'd prefer you to be her, not Gwen. And it's really like threatening them against each other. At which point, Jack, now he's got thoughts. He is like, Toshiko, listen to just me. And that was one of the reasons it's just that he just has more control of who can read his thoughts. Because otherwise, how would he be able to tap into that channel to speak to her directly?
Yeah. I like the fact that when we hear Yanto and Gwen's thoughts, Yanto is thinking, please not again.
Yeah.
I love that. Because actually, and I think Tosh misses this because I think she's too far convinced that humanity is awful to realise that this is the equivalent of the letter that the dad sends his children, a moment of genuine compassion from Yanto, that what that line means is he sees Toshiko as someone like Lisa, someone who is so important to him he cannot afford to lose her. So in the middle of all this, there's just a tiny little moment of love that gets missed.
Yeah.
And it makes me really sad.
It is sad.
And I also like, and this is in a very different way, I like the fact that when we hear Gwen's thoughts, she's assessing the weapon. She's being a police officer.
It's really interesting to hear everyone's calculations in that high stress situation. It makes them seem a bit more competent. The way that they're kind of like, that's training.
That's true. Yeah. And then Jack uses the transporter to trap Mary. He tricks her, basically. He gives it back to her. She's delighted. But he's rigged it to teleport her into the middle of a sun.
Yeah.
The
sun,
the actual sun.
Yeah. And Tosh is like, so you killed her? And he's like, yes. Which is very unsympathetic.
Yeah.
I really, from this point to the end of the episode, it's only about 5 minutes, not happy with Jack.
No.
Not very nice at all.
No, this is the second girlfriend of a team member.
He's obviously just getting fed up, though.
Yes.
He's like, you people and your relationships. Honestly.
Can you stop having murderous girlfriends?
Please, that's all I'm asking. So Mary's been sent to the sun. Tosh has clearly just been having a debrief with Jack. He sends her out. Owen and Gwen are chatting to each other and they're obviously trying to, build up the courage to be like, hey, mate, did you hear about our affair when you were reading our thoughts? Gwen kind of approaches Tosh to be a bit more like, I don't really know where this leaves us. She's really apologetic. She's like, I invaded your privacy. I feel awful for it. I don't really know how to move forward either. I can't take the moral high ground. But then as Tosh leaves, Gwen says something which is nice in a way.
Yeah.
She says, don't let this put you off. Because the past few days you've had a look about you. Love suited you.
Yeah.
Which I think is really nice.
Yeah.
And when I watched that when I was younger, I found that quite a validating, like, sexuality moment. That even for Gwen, who's just quite a normal, the everyday person who's come into this world, she was just like, there was no mention of the fact that it was with a woman.
Yeah.
Again, that's not mentioned. Even though this is a weird episode and it's an alien and there's murder, that was what I really liked about Torchwood, the fact that it wasn't addressed or mentioned for any of them. Gwen's just like, oh, it's been nice seeing you happy dating someone. Yeah. Don't let this put you off.
That's really true. The importance of the relationship, gender is irrelevant.
Mm-hmm.
And I suppose connecting to the point you made about colour-blind casting versus colour-conscious casting, this feels like sexuality blind writing, I suppose. That you could swap Mary for a man. You wouldn't need to change much of this episode. It's which, and sometimes I think that can be a bad thing. There are some sort of queer romance films or television episodes that you go, this could be a straight romance, and I feel it. Like I can't love this because it doesn't feel that truthful. Mm-hmm. But here, I think it's quite validating and quite nice.
I like it. So our final scene is Jack and Tosh sat out by the fountains, just out on the bay, talking about what had happened. And Tosh is kind of processing it. And it's set up like it's them talking through it. He's giving her emotional support. But it's clearly not that at all.
Yeah.
Because Tosh says, something Mary said, maybe the only honest thing she ever did said, is that, like, it gets inside you or something. You see a different side of people. And it's kind of processing what that means. They chat about what they should do with the pendant, and Jack says it's up to Tosh. And in the end, she drops it on the floor. She cracks it very easily.
Yeah.
With a boot.
Yeah.
With a steel
How
boot.
Did she know that would break so easily?
I know. And then she starts to say something else. She turns to Jack. She's seeking some kind of conversation, but he stands up, and his standing up signals to her that this conversation's over. Yeah. And she goes, it doesn't matter. And then he wipes a tear and walks off. But I've watched that a few times. Yeah. And initially, I'm like, oh, that's a bit rude. But I like to kind of interpret it in a different way, in that this is like, Tosh is probably the strongest member of the team. We'll find out more about why that is later. She can keep her head in the game.
Yeah.
And she's sort of starting to unravel a little bit. I mean, Jack, I'd recommend, once again, maybe take your teammate down the pub for a little chat. Why are you getting worse and worse at this again? Also, you just murdered her new girlfriend. No chat about that. Do you want to apologise? Nope. But I think when he stands up, it's kind of a sort of like, this doesn't need a conversation, because he knows that she is someone who deals with stuff by being like, nope, we carry on, which isn't the healthiest. But I watched it a few times because I was like, that seemed really rude. And I watched it again and again. And the way he's just so gentle with her. And he's like, he puts his hand on her head like a dad.
Yeah.
Like he's really caring for her. And when she says it doesn't matter, I think it's more like a sort of, nope, we carry on because that's how you deal with this. And I know you can. And he just wipes a tear and walks off. And I unlike my third watch of the same scene, I have decided it is a much nicer moment than it looks like on the surface.
Yeah.
I think he just knows her really well, and he knows what she needs in the moment.
There's a nice moment where Jack says, what do regular bosses do in situations like this? And it's quite nice to have it acknowledged that he isn't a regular boss. Now, on the one hand, that works as a funny joke because, he does not punish these people almost ever.
And also, though, he's like, do I get to hit somebody? And she's like, no, we've got laws for that. Yeah. Who are you going to hit? Tosh?
Yeah.
She's been through enough. He's just like, hey, Yanto, that's for the other week. Gwen and Owen, think you could do with a couple. Tosh, fucking fed up of you lot.
So it works as that. But it also works as he's making a nice little joke and sort of saying, look, you're not in trouble. Mm-hmm. You probably should be. A regular boss you would be. Yeah. But, know.
And that's probably why he doesn't give her more care into talking about it emotionally, because he's kind of angry with her. Yeah. He's very much forgiving her and he's being kind to show that, but it's not his place to comfort her. We once again did not pick a Torchwood moment of the week.
No, we didn't.
Do you have any nominations now?
All right, let's think off the top of my head. Nomination for Torchwood moment of the week is Jack dishing out no punishment.
Again, yeah.
Again, it's a running theme. We've got to mention it. Mm-hmm. Also, I think the fact that Owen knocks out Tosh's computer, it's not the fact that he does it. It's not even the fact that he's quite dismissive of her feelings. It's the fact that it does not occur to him that she'll be as annoyed as she is that he kicks the plug out. He's like, what? It was only work. Like,
It's only really expensive stuff that you've worked on for months.
Yeah. She's put in effort, and it's also saving the world, by the way. That's what she's up to. And he's like, what? Do you know what? I think even the stick up your ass is a stick up its ass sometimes. Why? Because she's annoyed that you ruined months of work that she was probably quite proud of.
Yeah.
And that was probably important.
Yeah. I was going to nominate just the fact that he kicks the plug out, because I think it's one thing to mess around and have fun at your job.
Yeah.
But when you're jeopardizing this really important software, and also it shouldn't be that easy to kick a plug out.
Yes, that's true.
I love the idea that in Torchwood they just have sockets.
Yeah.
They just like these supercomputers, boop, click. And there's like IT problems. They're like, switch it off.
Yeah.
Switch it on again. Is that the translation software running? Are we all good? That's really funny.
I'm happy
if you'll
with
agree
that.
to broaden it to just everything it entails, the whole scene where he kicks the football and unplugs her really important software, because that's so fucking Torchwood.
Yeah.
That's really funny.
Okay,
so that is our Torchwood moment of the week.
Yes.
Excellent work.
Lovely. Thank you very much for joining us.
That was episode 7 of series 1 of Torchwood.
Yes.
The next episode we are looking at is...
They Keep Killing.
They Keep Killing.
As they refer to it in the Radio Times.
Which they now refer to, which you will see the title of.
Yeah, so you're going to see it anyway.
They Keep Killing Susie.
It is the return of Susie.
It is the return of Susie.
And, well, actually, which we also know from the trailer at the end of this episode.
That's true, yeah.
So, very exciting.
Mm-hmm. This one, last episode, I said Countryside was one of my favourites, maybe my favourite. It's not my favourite at all. This episode is my favourite of the season.
That's cool.
So, yeah, I really, really like this one.
This is an episode where I think I quite liked it at first. When I rewatched it, it blew my mind.
Mm-hmm.
I think I probably didn't know what to expect the first time. The second time, knowing what it was, I really admire this episode. It does so much.
It does.
But I can't remember why. It's been so long.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like it's just like 50 minutes long. Yeah. It's really, really good. So looking forward to that. Thank you once again, Steph, for joining me and talking about the greatest show ever made.
Thank you for, I don't know, agreeing to film what we would have been talking about anyway.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us, everybody.
Thank you. And we'll talk to you next time.
See you next time.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye. Should we wave at TV presenters?